Welcome to Lay Connect. Lay Connect is the place where we hope to take you regularly inside the mind of an artist. Lay Connect is about artists who have gone through an intensive journey of their own, and they come to share, to care, to connect with us, to share with us their challenges, their motivations, and their aspirations with us. And somewhere, I hope that we will all find shades of their lives in our own. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Fergal Hughes.
Thank you, Beth, for the really good introduction. What I want to talk to you just briefly about today is a little bit about me, my history as a musician, and also the reason why I'm in this area at the moment, and the company that I currently work for. Just a slight bit of history on myself. I'm from Ireland, which is just beside England, over the farthest end of Europe that you can go. I started performing or practicing music when I was about 10, 11 years of age, and my primary first instrument was the drum kit. At the age of 11, I started to take proper drum lessons, and by the age of 14, I broke through into performing. I was in a cover band, which you get everywhere in the world, Dimapur right the way through to Shanghai, to Malaysia, and if you go to the other side of the world, Mexico, everywhere, you will find cover bands playing the exact same songs that cover bands will play here. So I started performing when I was 14, and upon my first performance, I performed in a live venue, finished my 45, 50-minute set, got off stage. I was the youngest member in the band. All the others were maybe 20 years of age, so 6 years my senior. And at the end of the night, I was handed money. And it was pretty much at that moment I realized I could probably make a living out of this for the rest of my life. Education intervenes, and I decided to go down the route of computing and doing different things, and sales, and different types of job descriptions. But I always had music as a part-time pastime, hobby, and profession as well too. By the age of 23, I decided that music was going to become a bigger part of my life, and I decided to become a professional tutor. Contemporary music is pop, rock, jazz, funk, blues, Latin, calypso, bossa nova, anything that isn't classically based, something that Mozart didn't compose or Beethoven didn't compose as such, or something that isn't classically based in the world. I'm currently on tour in India for 9 weeks, which will take in 752 examinations. I'm qualified to examine all 5 instruments that Rockschool provide: drums, guitar, bass, piano, stroke keyboard, and vocals. And the guitar element has also brought into play the acoustic end of things. The next slide is sort of advice, general sort of pointers towards each instrument. Guitar and bass, again, you've got pull-offs and hammer-ons, you've got slides, quarter bends, muted strings. Again, these are the sort of things that I, as an examiner or somebody that judges performances in front of me, want to see in each examination, from a basic level or an intermediate level right the way through to professional level, which will be our grade 8 level or diploma level, advanced. Again, vocals present the same sort of thing: presence, how you present yourself in the examination and performance, right the way through to melismas, how you're able to control a sustained note while you're singing. Drums, specific drum notation. Again, the main sort of thing that you need to realize when you're coming to an examination is be prepared and don't try anything new. A lot of times people feel that because the adrenaline is going and there's endorphins rushing around your body, that you feel that you're Superman or Superwoman and you can do anything in that moment. Don't try anything that you haven't tried before. That's a big sort of bit of advice. We do two major types of examinations. Performance certificate, which is 5 songs. You just come in, you play your heart out, and you walk out of the room. The other element, which is the more academic element, is graded examinations. So, simple advice. Know what songs you're playing and in the order in which you're playing them. Guitar and bass players, please, please, tune up before you come into the room, and between songs as well too. The examiner is more than happy to hear an in-tune guitar as opposed to an out-of-tune guitar, so take your time and don't feel you're putting the examiner out. By all means, tune up. Drummers, make sure the drum kit is where it should be. Don't just sit down and be prepared to play. By all means, feel free to move a hi-hat cymbal or a crash or a ride or the snare or a bass drum pedal. And if there's issues, always ask. And during your sound check, if you're doing an examination, and we'll allude on this a little later on, is during your sound check, play at normal volume. If you sit down to play and you're playing quietly and you're afraid to sort of be too abrupt in your sound check, then once the music kicks in, you're not going to get the same level of balance between your backing track and the actual song you're playing through the instrument. So, moving slightly on, do's and don'ts for the examination. At all times, use your book. That's the number one bit of advice that I have. Don't think you know it all. You don't know what's going to happen in the scenario of sitting in front of a peer and trying to play your heart out, you know. You might forget something, you might make a mistake, and then you look up and the book's closed or the wrong song is open. So at all times, use any available means that are at your disposal. Be ready to set up and take down. So if you're bringing in extra cymbals or pedals or whatever it may be prepared for that. So you're not fumbling over things as you're coming in and out of the exam. Listen to the original track. This goes to whether you're doing an exam with Rockschool or anything else. Listen to the track that you're playing. You might hear things that the book just can't tell you. So listen to the original and try and duplicate that as much as possible within reason, within your capabilities. And if I offer or if people offer you help during a performance, by all means take it if you need it. I'm going to perform for you one song just before I sit with Bethan. This piece is a rock fusion piece, and it's part of our Rockschool drum syllabus. It's a grade 8 piece, so it's one of the more advanced pieces, and it's called Dark Matter. It's rock fusion, so again, it's down the road of the Steve Vais of the world, or the Aristocrats end of things, or Guthrie Govins, and artists like that. So I'm going to perform it for you, and then I'll sit and have a quick chat. Thank you.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
to know is, what do you think makes for a good sound check?
Well, I sort of harbored on it a little bit earlier on. Whenever you're setting up and getting prepared to perform, everybody has to be able to hear everybody else. That's probably one of the main things when it comes to sound checks. It's obviously the most important thing is that nothing's too loud on stage, because if one thing is too loud, then it overthrows everything else, and nobody will have a decent balance on stage. So the on-stage sound is paramount. If you go to a big concert, whether it be a Celine Dion or Beyonce concert, or right the way through to a Metallica concert, you walk on stage beside those artists as they're playing, you will hardly hear, you could hear a pin drop while they're playing. All of the amplification is coming from the big speakers that are at the sides of stage. So these guys on stage, that's why they're able to perform to 60,000 people every night of their lives, because the amplification comes from out front, not on stage. So my number one bit of advice is get your on-stage sound as low and as clear and crisp as possible.
Interesting. What about your relationship with your sound engineer? How do you guys go about, do you move around with the sound?
Yeah, well, yeah, we have our own sound engineer who also doubles as our lighting guy and helps load the gear in and out of our vans. But yeah, what you always want to try and do is experiment a little bit as well too. So our guitar player, for example, up until 2 years ago, always just used to plonk his amplifier on the stage, didn't really care about where it sat, what it looked like, or what direction it faced. As long as there was a microphone in front of it, then he would get sound coming back to himself. However, he found out that the amplifier, for example, the tubes inside the amplifier will work better if they're at a certain angle and if they're supported underneath by certain sort of wood. So my friend, the guitar player here, in the middle just behind me, he devised his own box that he takes everywhere, and that's the box that he now puts his amplifier on. And he got a joiner, a carpenter, to make it, so that the amplifier is at a certain angle at all times. So it's being able to go that little bit further just to try and get the most crisp of sounds. The sound engineer was the guy that sort of advised him with this. Yeah, try and keep a good relationship with your sound engineer, or else you will sound the worst person on stage.
All right. How do you go about life? You wear so many hats. A father, a husband, a performer, an examiner, a full-time examiner, and
I'm a circus clown as well too, part-time. Yeah,
and a drummer, and so many. So how do you balance your life out?
Yeah, from a young age, when I started to learn drums, I realized, okay, I love the drums. It's my primary instrument, and I always call myself a drummer. But I also realized that perhaps I need to become a multi-instrumentalist as well too. And upon doing that, perhaps I wouldn't be sitting here today if I hadn't have learned how to play the guitar and learned my scales and learned different bits and pieces technically. Perhaps I wouldn't have been an examiner today, you know. So having played so many roles at a younger age, I've maintained that in growing up. It's difficult. I'm here for 9 weeks in India, and these sort of tours can be challenging, but yeah, I'm a logical person, first and foremost. If a train gets cancelled in India, which never happens apparently, but if a train gets cancelled or a flight gets delayed or something happens, I'm logical. There's nothing I can do about it as a person. I just have to roll with the punches.
True.
So it's the same being a musician, a session musician, a performer, an examiner, and a father of 2 children and a husband to a wife. You just got to be able to find that logical balance and try not to overweigh one end with another, you know. It's just trying to find that. It's difficult, but I feel as though I'm finding it, I hope.
Great.
Ask my wife.
Great. So do you have any funny moments that you can share with us from your shows or your exams? Somebody you got tackled or mobbed?
Yeah, exactly. I have had very varied experiences as a performer over the years, from having to perform in wind and rain that would tear the skin off your face, and with sparks flying from amplifiers and small fires taking place on sound desks and stuff like that, right the way through to the experience of being an examiner. I've had all range of experiences from that world, notably most the usual sort of people that are quite emotional during examinations, and sometimes the emotion gets better of them, to the point of where one of my candidates fainted
After the exam?
just before the examination.
Oh my.
Just before the examination.
And then what happened?
She was a pianist, and it was a medical condition in some way, shape, or form, and it wasn't her fault. She isn't usually the sort of person that faints as such, but she fainted all the same, and I almost tripped over her in gaining help for her. But again, the moral of the story here is the little girl, she was 16, 17 at the time, she brought herself back round again, came back in, and was able to perform the examination. And it was a high-level exam, it was grade 7 as far as I remember. And she performed incredibly well. So, there's somebody that fainted before their exam that was still able to perform, So there's a lesson to be learned.
Interesting. Do we have some celebrities, big musicians, names that have been part of Rock School examinations?
Yeah. Examiners ourselves, we're pretty much involved in the industry. I'm more involved in the more local end of things in Ireland, but a lot of us examiners have toured with the likes of Sting and Madonna and Annie Lennox and solo artists. Because all these solo artists, they require session musicians at all times. And every tour is usually different. So yeah, the examiners that that Rock School have are usually guys at the top of their game.
Music is a great connect between people, even strangers, and in your case, it's gone beyond performance stage into your life. Tell us a bit about your wife, Georgina, who is also a professional percussionist.
Yes, my wife, Georgina, she is, and my 2 kids. I shouldn't have to point out which is my wife, no? Okay. Yeah, so my wife, Georgina,
she's a percussionist.
She's a percussionist. She's a professional percussionist. She's currently a lecturer in university, so she's not a professor, but a lecturer of a music university based locally to us in Ireland. And she's been doing that for several years. She's also privately tutoring as well too, but she started probably in and around the same age as me with her musical education, 8, maybe 10 years of age, and yeah, she is currently.
You said you're neighbours.
Yeah, we're pretty much neighbours. In the grand scheme of things, over here, a short distance for you guys is like 2 hours in a car, whereas a short distance for us back home is 300 yards. Oh. So she is my neighbour by way of 300 yards away. From my front door to her front door, she is my next door neighbour as such, I was giving her drum lessons. Is this wrong to say? We met over a dimly lit drum kit. So
and you were playing on the table.
Yeah, no, I was giving her lessons. I was giving her drum lessons, and we became friends, and we started to socialise together. And 19 years later, we're still together. We've been a couple since the tender age of 16, and we're married for 9 years this year. Yeah, so 19 years with the same woman. Yeah, it's great. But no, on a serious note. Yeah, again, at all points, you shouldn't stay stagnant. We are always trying to further ourselves as a couple as well, too. She's currently pursuing her doctorate, her PhD in music and musicology. So hopefully, within the next 2 years, she will be Dr. Georgina Hughes.
Oh, wow.
Which would be great. because I'll be able to say, here's my wife, the doctor, you know.
So you're the drummer, she's the percussionist.
Yes.
What's the musical debate you have at home?
I saw where this was going. Yeah, we try not to speak music in the house too often. But this is the thing. My wife is a fervent lover of popular music. Mm-hmm. She is a Beyonce fanatic. She's a Justin Timberlake fan. She loves contemporary popular music. When we got married, fair enough, there was a string quartet on the altar when we were getting married, and they played mostly classical music. But at our wedding reception, it was all funk and pop and hip hop and rock and everything, you know. Our first dance was to Stevie Wonder, you know. So, yeah, you gotta be able to not isolate yourself to one form of music, and therefore our discussions can be lively back home. The only time we argue, this is one thing I would say, the only time we argue is in a professional capacity. So, yeah, it's usually to do with rock and roll is the way forward, whereas she, of course, believes that unless you're classically trained, then you don't know anything about music as such, you know. So, yeah, these make for lively debates back home.
So she's with the National Symphony? She plays for the National Symphony?
Yeah, she plays for both of the national orchestras, the NSO, the National Symphony Orchestra of Ireland, and the RTE Concert Orchestra, which is the national television station. They have their own orchestra as such because they provide quite a lot of musical entertainment on TV. And music back home in Ireland is, apart from sport, would be the number one hobby and pastime. There's a lot of history regarding Irish music around the world, Celtic music around the world.
So talking about Irish music, how is the music in Ireland moving, and how is it moving towards, every day things are changing, technology coming in?
Absolutely. Well, 100 years ago, Irish traditional music, which would have involved violins and guitars and whistles and flutes, it has now progressed to, you've got people from The Script are from Ireland, U2 is from Ireland, other major rock artists like the Cranberries. You've got popular artists
lots of big names from there.
Yeah, there's lots of big contemporary musical artists that are from Ireland. Another element that isn't publicised enough about Ireland is the production end of things. If you go to any major opera house or any major concert venue in the world, chances are there's somebody Irish working behind the scenes in production. Ireland is a hotbed for production, and our universities and higher education facilities provide this in a big way. And there's a lot of artists and there's a lot of artists and production houses that come to Ireland to record specifically. For example, Michael Jackson, for the last 5 years of his life, all music that he released or recorded was done primarily in Ireland.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he flew to Ireland to record most of his stuff, which is, it's only a tip of the iceberg of, potential that my small, very small country has. Like, it's a country of 5 million people only, And it's a landmass that's waterlocked, and
it's beautiful.
It's gorgeous. It really is beautiful. But yeah, for such a small country, we've provided so much in the world of music and entertainment.
Now we know where to go to next.
Yeah. So by all means, you're all invited to Ireland. Yeah.
We'll find you.
Yeah, absolutely. Google me. I'll be around.
Google you. Something that's really been, something I wanted to check with you as a drummer is, for a piano player, what happens is when I play or my students play, I ask them to go crescendo or decrescendo. So you have both hands playing. But for a drummer, you're using all your 4 limbs. Yeah. Which one goes loud and which one goes softer?
Exactly,
How does dynamics work for you, and how do you control?
This is a thing, dynamics for me...
You can sit on a drum set.
Yeah, I'll demonstrate a little. Dynamics for me would be one of the main issue points with regards to drummers. For example, the piece I played earlier, there were 2 solos in it. There was a bass solo and a guitar solo before the drum solo. And it's part of the education of an instrument that you've got to let yourself sing as a musician, but those around you to sing as well too. And to be able to do that, dynamics play the ultimate part. But for a drummer, being the octopus that I am, it's also independence of movement. Just to show you, there's different ways upon gaining dynamics on a drum kit. By hitting a drum, like a snare drum, just in the middle, by default it's going to be loud. So you've got to be able to adjust your positioning when attacking a drum. And there's different techniques and different ways of learning this. And even with the drum itself, there's different elements to a drum. There's different parts to a drum. So you've got the steel rim that goes around the side. So you can get a quieter click sort of sound from that. Or it can also be used to get a rim shot, whereby you hit the middle of the drum and the rim at the same time. And it gives you that ear-achingly loud sort of projection. What I tend to do is add into whenever I'm playing rhythms and syncopation and stuff like that, I try to accentuate. So even though I'm playing a simple swing rhythm, by just accentuating one note, it makes the rhythm come alive. Otherwise it's just, which can be a bit...
Can you do the other one?
Yeah, as opposed to...
It does make a huge difference.
Yeah, by just adding that one small accent to that rhythm. Yeah. Again, it can be applied to the foot on the hi-hat, the bass drum, or the snare. So a simple jazz rhythm, like... can be developed into something that sort of has a life of its own. And this is where the world of jazz sort of came alive. It's what are you willing to provide to the listener as an artist, you know? So where do you accent? Where do you, put your polyrhythms and syncopation and stuff? So that simple jazz rhythm can transform to... just by adding accents and slightly different notes. Or if you bring it to the most simplistic, just by using one symbol, you can color a song, you know?
Very interesting.
So yeah, it's just, there's different ways of adding color and light to the most simplest of things, you know?
Interesting. What about beat placement? This is something I read somewhere, and it's like you have the beat right before the note, and then there's one that's right there on the note.
Yeah.
And then there's after the beat, after the note.
Yeah. So
how do you use that?
Yeah, again, that would be more the polyrhythm sort of accents. And again, within the education world, what you want to try and do is further yourself with exercises that are going to become part of your everyday playing. So there's many exercises, there's many books that have been written over the years just for the snare drum, just for that one drum stuck in the middle of the drum kit.
The snare drum.
Yeah, the snare drum. And if you can hone your skills to maybe just that one drum, then you don't know what's possible around the drum kit itself.
So you're saying that the snare is the most
central,
important.
Yeah. It's for me and for the world of drumming. The snare drum is the one thing that, and it's the oldest of all the contemporary drums. It's the one that was before all others. It's the one that was used to march into battle you know, hundreds and thousands of years ago. There was somebody
True.
hit this thing to keep everybody in check when they're marching into battle.
True.
You know, so this is how far back this thing goes. So yeah, the snare drum for me is the most important drum out of all of the drums around the kit. And if you can hone your skills on the snare drum, then the rest of the kit falls into place. It really does. It really
There you
does.
go.
So,
Drummers.
yeah.
Next on, we have something interesting. All right.
Hey. Okay, one more?
Let's wind it up.
Last one, okay.
Let's wind it up. Play Connect, this is just the beginning. We have lots more to go. November, we're lining up another very interesting guest artist. So I hope to see you in November. Thank you again and have a lovely evening, everyone. Thank you for. Thank you.